Welcome. I am Dr. Genevieve, and I'm a clinical pharmacist by training. And so the topic we're talking about today is really something that's kind of along the lines of training. And, there's a lot of information out there about vitamins and minerals and things like that. So we wanted to use this as a basis of conversation. So the title of my topic this month is Get the Facts Straight, the real deal about vitamins and minerals. So we've been doing this, as an expert series. And while this falls in the line of like nutritionists, I think that there is some content that I can talk about here just from my personal experience. I will preface this by saying that there's when it comes to children on the autism spectrum, um, the key crucial things we need to think about when we're getting vitamins and minerals is to get it from a source that is free from dyes and free from artificial flavoring and free from all the, you know, contaminants. I call it contaminant, but the additives that are placed in there, because oftentimes the additives in itself can also actually trigger additional immune related issues. So there are a number of reputable companies out there that we like to recommend. And for me personally, from a liability standpoint, I will not necessarily be promoting one product over the other, just because I want to be mindful that we have children on here and parents on here who may be getting advice from their doctors. So I always say, talk to your healthcare professional about decision in what vitamins or minerals you're going to put your child on. It's very important, because if something goes up, we just need to make sure that the physician or the nurse practitioner who's working with the individual is aware. So my job here is to just provide educate us, but more importantly, that caveat is there. So that's going to be part of what I want to talk about as we share here. From that standpoint of making sure that people know that this is a bias-free talk. As a healthcare professional, I owe my audience and my families that responsibility of knowing that I want to make sure we know that. However, we do have parents among us who have a lot of experience with different products. They've used it personally. So if you're interested in finding out more and you just want to kind of get some guidance, I know we have a number of parents who are also health professionals among us who have experience with one product over the other, and they might be able to counsel you and give you some guidance there. So I also want to put that out there, so if you're interested, reach out to us on our WhatsApp group. And for those of you who get that information, reach out to us, and I will be able to point you out to a couple of people who have some experiences with products, and know where to get them at a discounted rate. But just because I want to make sure that we provide the best service we can and give you guidance without necessarily pointing you and saying that you have to do one product over the other. That's part of my responsibility. So I will get into, let me see if I will be able to share my screen here. I think this is the screen I want to share. Yes. So this is, we're talking about, let's get the facts straight. And we're going to talk about the importance of these vitamins and minerals. And so as I go into my overview, let's talk about what are vitamins, what are the categories of vitamins, the functions, food sources, deficiencies, minerals, and what are the categories of minerals and antioxidants. And I will also be talking a little bit about just autism and, developmental disabilities and some of the elemental pieces in that manner. I think it's crucial that we have that understanding of how these things fit in that context of autism spectrum disorders. So I want to highlight that here. And So, but we'll also talk about what we call phytonutrients. We will talk about functional foods, food labels, and so on. So I have to remind us that autism is a whole body disorder. There are a number of things that are complicated about it. So when we now start to talk about vitamins and minerals, is to remind ourselves why vitamins and minerals are so crucial, right? And we know that there are a number of toxicities that occur. So when I say toxicity, meaning that things that could be toxic to our body systems, that will end up having an effect in how our body breaks down, or what we call metabolizes, minerals and vitamins that we take in. So we may have a number of issues that are going on in there. And even though you may have a form of a vitamin, for example, you can take in vitamin B12. But if they needs to be converted into what we call the currency, or the form that the body can readily use. So if there's a problem in what we call your methylation or sulfation process, which is where the body basically converting in a form that of that vitamin in a form that the rest of the system can use, then you can take in all the vitamin you want. You're not going to have the effect that you need. So in essence, you'll need to be able to break it down into the form that must be completely be able to be absorbed and be utilized by the system. So there's a complexity. So what I'm trying to get here is, you see how complex this little chart is? I can do a whole 1-hour lecture just walking through this chart. But I just make that point to say that we believe that in a lot of our children have a lot of inflammation. So the inflammation is what causes a challenge for the gut, the stomach, to now do its task. And so there's a number of things that we need to just be mindful about, and how to reduce this. The goal is to kind of reduce this, And if you think about what's happening with the COVID pandemic, a lot of complications we're seeing from the pandemic has to do with inflammation. And so because the body's immune system now becomes overreactive. So a number of things that are being taken is to kind of reduce inflammation. And we see in our individuals on the autism spectrum, a number of them have this. So what that happens is that it causes what we call the gut, leaky gut, right? Gut permeability is impaired. And what that means is that the vitamins and minerals are not properly processed. We have a whole cascade of complications that goes down to now affect the ability for the body to use the form that we are taking in, which is why we end up having to take in the methylated form, because you may have a problem with this whole process. Describe it later. And so if you take in a vitamin, that needs to be methylated, and this process is that's not functioning, what's going to end up happen is then that individual cannot absorb that vitamin. So then they have to take it in the form that they can best absorb, if that makes sense. So I shared this chart just so to make the point that it's a very complicated process, but we need to be mindful that when we have that individual and they're not absorbing, then it doesn't matter how much vitamins that you buy routinely from the store you give them, they're not going to be able to convert it in a form that is readily needed. And so we need to address the issue of the inflammation, the issue of the methylation process, and the detoxification process needs to be addressed, so that when you now take in vitamins and minerals, that they can now be functional to do the things they need to. So a number of us are very big proponents on understanding that, when you have an individual on autism spectrum, you need to address any underlying issues that are going on. And then a lot of the underlying issues has to do with the absorption, and also being able to take in and have the body's system function the way it should. And normally food is what helps us to be able to, get in the nutrients and vitamins and minerals that we need. But the food on our kids are often restricted. A lot of them are on restricted diets. So they're not even getting in the proper mix of food that they should. And that's because there are food allergens that will not cause that inflammatory process that causes, and there's a whole topic in itself. The sugars, the processed foods, the allergens and sensitivities are all things that affects the body system. And so the individual is not getting what they need. So the first one of the key things we talk about in the realm of the autism spectrum disorder is to modify, is to modify and address these food allergens and the sensitivities. The other piece of it is to also not address any or target a nutritional supplementation, which means that we want to be able to ensure that vitamins, minerals that we're taking in will improve the gut health and then reduce toxic burden, because the more toxic burden or heavy metals or other toxins that are in the system, the more likelihood for the individual not to be able to function properly. And when that happens, it also affects the immune system, which makes it go round and round and round. So you end up having a very sick individual who is prone to sicknesses. So, we know that with this COVID-19, our population is the most at risk because a lot of them have an immune dysfunctionality. And it has to do with the fact that they're not able to now get their immune system functioning the way it should. And it has to do probably because they're not getting in the proper nutrition. It has to do with the fact that they're getting in vitamins and minerals, but the vitamins and minerals are not being converted into the form that the body can really use. So it becomes an ongoing process. Okay, so we know that your GI system is very, 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 very crucial. The gut has constant contact with food, physical barriers of defense against bacteria and viruses. That's where the gut wall is, and it's important. So that's where it's making the part about if you have an inflammatory disease or you have inflammation widespread, it now has a lot of it is usually going to be in the gut. The greatest amount of chemicals that are produced in the body is called serotonin, and it's found in terms of the serotonin, the brain chemical, it's found in the GI tract. And serotonin is a precursor for making melatonin, which is also very important for sleep. So a lot of times, we see that kids may have, or individuals may have low amounts of the serotonin in the system, which now sees why they might be up all night. We know that the largest amount of your immune system is found in the gut. And vitamins and minerals are the cofactors for enzyme reactions, metabolism, conversion of nutrients and fats. And amino acids, which are absorbed from the protein digestions, are precursors for neurotransmitters. I just mentioned that earlier, even with serotonin. So these neurotransmitters, when they're low, we then see all the complications that we see in individuals. I love using this graphic from Kirkman Labs. They call them Kirkman groups, only because it kind of illustrates the point of what goes on with these individuals. A lot of them have nutritional profile, which means that, we may see abnormalities in your lab test, their skin conditions, eczema, they become very tired and lethargic, so we see that, and this is why you need that supplement. A lot of them have behavioral traits. We know that aggression, depression, eye contact, and a number of those things are all some of the symptoms we see in these individuals. A lot of them may have sleep issues, insomnia, nightmares, restlessness. So they also have digestive issues. We see enzyme insufficiency and absorption. You start to see food particles in the stool. Gastrointestinal issues. They have leaky gut, again, yeast and bacterial overgrowth. You see diarrhea, alternating with constipation. It's hard to see this on the bottom, but some of the biomedical pathways, we start to see the detoxification issues. And then immune deficiencies is the other thing we see. They become very sick frequently, low glutathione levels, etc. So I use this chart because it really, really does a fantastic job of kind of summarizing some of the issues we see with our individuals. And it doesn't mean that you're going to have all these issues at the same time. It just may mean that in a pathway along the way, you might start to see that. But I always tell the story of my son, Nicholas, and that's really what got me on this road on the biomedical intervention pathway. And I want to just make the disclaimer that the biomedical pathway is not a cure for autism. It's not. What we need to understand is that you have an individual that may have issues, and because of an inflammatory process or inflammation, widespread inflammation, now start to present with leaky gut, gastrointestinal issues. That's what happened with my son. We were dealing with constipation, diarrhea. Once we paid attention to what was happening with the stomach, all of a sudden we start to see improvement in his behaviors, for example. Why? Because he was feeling better. So ultimately, when we talk about biomedical intervention, we are trying to address all these issues that's going on with this individual who is nonverbal or has verbal ability, but is struggling to be able to express how they feel. So the point here is that health is the key thing. Healthy diet, healthy lifestyle, the body being in the function that it needs to be in is really what I always talk about. And it's important to drill that home because people often get very defensive. I have behavioral therapists who get very defensive and say, oh, this stuff doesn't work. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Take a look. If you're a human being and you have headaches and your headache is coming from the result of not sleeping, and you're not sleeping because you have low serotonin and low melatonin levels, of course you're going to now have the behaviors. You're going to be irritable. You're going to be aggressive. You're not going to like anybody. But the moment you go down and address what's the cause of your sleeplessness and you've settled that, all of a sudden you start to see that, wow, I feel better, I'm acting better, I'm doing better. Now, if you're teaching me, I understand it. And that's the bottom line in this conversation, is really for people to kind of get that point across. So to make the point again here is that we have insomnia, night wake up, nightmare, restlessness. Right now, we're going through a little bit of that more now. And I think COVID has a lot to do with it because the individual is home all day long. We try to get them out to go out and walk around and try to get an activity, but it's just overwhelming. They may have behavioral trait like social skills issue, eye contact, aggression, depression. They, may have an enzyme insufficiency. So you see that a lot of times where the food is completely undigested. Drilling it down a little bit more about the different deficiencies. You have immune deficiencies, so they have allergies, oxidative stress. The biomedical pathways that I talked about earlier has to do with the sulfation and methylation, which I will explain that later. And then leaky gut, which is a part of the gastrointestinal, and then a poor nutritional profile where they're tired. And now, the average individual who does not get enough sun is very low in vitamin D. And when you're low in vitamin D, you find yourself tired, not able to really move around and do a lot. And many, many, many of us are all deficient in vitamin D. And that's one of the things that more and more doctors are beginning to measure that blood work as part of the blood work when you go in. So what are vitamins? So vitamins are, part of getting our facts straight. These are complex substances that regulate body processes. So your body is a machine. We need certain substances to help it to be able to do its job. So it definitely is important and it's crucial, and it can be found in foods. But if you're not eating well, your diet is poor, it's all loaded with carbs, and it's loaded and limited amount of the vitamins, obviously it's going to have an impact. So this is where we may not have to supplement. And that's why people use the word supplements when you're talking about kids on the autism spectrum, like, oh yeah, they're on supplements. Well, that's because if they have restricted diet and you need to now be able to supplement them with what's needed. That's why we call them supplements. So what are some of the categories of the vitamins? We have your fat soluble and what we call water soluble. Fat soluble means that it dissolves in fat, is stored, gets into the fat stores of the body, and I call it A, D, E, and K. Those are the vitamin A, D, E, and K, fat soluble. And water soluble, they dissolve in water, they don't get to store. You take a lot of it, it gets out of your system. We can call it kind of like overload on your A, D, E, and K, and that could be an issue. So excess of it can be harmful, especially with A and D. Too much of vitamin K actually can also have an effect, especially if you're on blood thinners. So it's something for us to be mindful about. Let's talk about vitamin A. It functions, normal function of vitamin A, we think about it is the eye. Normal vision protects us from infection, it regulates the immune system. It's considered an antioxidant also through carotenoids. Food sources, so you eat a liver, fish oil, eggs, fortified milk, or other oil, other foods. So these are very important to kind of note that. Vitamin D, promotes absorption and of calcium and phosphorus. So vitamin D is very crucial. I think that enough of us don't have enough of it, and because we don't go out in the sun a lot enough. So we need to just make sure that we get in our vitamin D, and so we should be supplementing that. It regulates a cell growth and plays a role in our immunity. Sources, could be being in the sun, salmon, milk, orange juice, fortified cereals are all 8 ways that you can get it in. So let's talk about vitamin E. So, it functions as an antioxidant. That's one of the key ones, and especially for lowering your risk for heart disease and stroke and some cancer types. And it protects the fatty acids and vitamin A. So what are your sources of vitamin E? Vegetable oils, those are all foods made from oil, salad dressing, your nuts, seeds, wheat germ, green leafy vegetables. Those are all sources of your vitamin E. Vitamin K, so helps the body to clot, helps the body to make other proteins. And some of the sources of that body can produce it from its own bacteria from the gut. Green leafy vegetables, as you see in the pattern, leafy vegetables, green, your broccolis, all those elements are all very important. So the goal here is that you want to be able to get your sources of your vitamins and minerals from food that are good for you. That's how God intended it to be. Obviously, because I've talked a lot about the absorption issues in the beginning, that may be a reason why you may need to supplement. Thiamine is vitamin B1. It helps produce energy from carbs, and you can get it from, grains and rich grain, products, pork and liver. Riboflavin is B2, produces energy, and it changes tryptophan into niacin. You can get that from, yogurt and milk and enriched. So these are all part of the vitamin Bs, which is important. And once again, green leafy vegetables again are also very rich in B2. Niacin functions and helps by the body to use sugar and fatty acids, and it helps enzyme function normally, and it produces energy. So what are your sources? Food high in protein, typically your poultry, fish, beef, peanut butter, legumes, and enriched and fortified grains. Vitamin B6. This helps the body make non-essential amino acid. It helps tryptophan into niacin and serotonin, and it helps the body's chemicals and hemoglobin. This is one crucial vitamin, B6, because it along with magnesium is very significant in helping even with sleep issues. So it's one of the crucial vitamins that is very helpful, especially in individuals on autism spectrum who have challenges really developing neurotypically. So it's a crucial vitamin to have, and if it's low in it, it can really have an effect on the neurological function. So as you see here, it helps turn tryptophan into niacin and serotonin. And I mentioned earlier about low challenges in sleep is usually also resulting from low melatonin levels. So B6 is very important. You can get sources of, get it from chicken, pork, fish, liver, whole grains, nuts, and legumes. Now, mind you, when we talk about whole grains, we are mindful that, people have different special diets and things like that. So that's something to note. But as I share this topic, I just want us to also be mindful that, this can also be for us as parents, to really make sure that we're taking care of our body well. Folic acid includes functions to produce DNA, RNA, making new body cells. It works well with vitamin B12 to form hemoglobin, and it protects against heart disease and lowers risk of neural tubes defects in babies, which is why pregnant women must have folic acid. Very, very important, because it's a crucial part in that baby forming. It controls the plasma homocysteine levels, which is related to heart disease. So folic acid is very crucial. It can be found in fortified and enriched grains and breakfast cereals, orange juice, legumes, leafy green vegetables, peanuts, avocados, etc. So folic acid up there in terms of need. As I entered into the world of autism, this is going back 17 years now. I've now have to come to learn about all these things, because guess what? We now have to use it. COBALAMIN, vitamin B12, works with folate to make the red blood cells, as we talked about, and in many body chemicals and cells. It helps the body use amino acid and fatty acids. Very, very, very crucial. And has been, the methylated form of it, which is really, so a lot of these vitamins I was talking about, you really want to get into the methylated form, which is where the body converts it into the form that it can actually use. When we're talking about, working with the folic acid, folate, it goes through a whole cycle to now convert it into the form the body can use and to do the function it's designed for. So when we have a problem in that process, it's an issue. When my son Nicholas was first diagnosed, this was one of the first specific type of vitamin that we went on and got the methylated form of it, which is not orally absorbed, meaning that you don't take it in as a tablet, but it required us to use it in the form of subcutaneous, under the skin tissue, so that it can get absorbed in a form that the body can use. And it was really crucial. It was very helpful for him. Some of the sources of vitamin B12 include animal products, meats, fish, poultry, eggs, and milk. Biotin is the next vitamin we talk about. Produces energy, helps the body use protein, carbs, fats from food. You can get it from a variety of food sources, including eggs, liver, wheat germ, peanuts, cottage cheese, and whole grain bread. The next one to talk about is pantothenic acid. It helps produce energy, helps the body use proteins, fat, and carbs. Sources include most food, meat, poultry, fish, whole grain cereals, legumes, milk, fruits, and veggies. My accent is coming out seriously today. Okay, let's talk about vitamin C. Right now in the COVID climate now, vitamin C is very, 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 very important. It helps the body produce collagen, which is connective tissue in bones and muscles. It keeps the capillary walls of the blood vessel firm, and it helps absorb iron and folate. It heals cuts and wounds, and it protects from infection and boosts the immunity. It is antioxidant, and I think is a very crucial one that we need to take in every day. So we're in a climate right now that, because we want to make sure our immune system is at the height of its level, that means that we should be making sure that we're getting an adequate source of vitamin C in our system. So deficiencies can result in a number of complications, including rickets, which really affects the formation of bones. It can cause osteoporosis for vitamin D. You can get scurvy, which affects the muscle structure. So deficiency of vitamin C can now cause this issue in children. Vitamin A can cause night blindness, and thiamine can cause something called beriberi. And especially, that we tend to see that more in alcoholics who are not eating well. And so these are some of the deficiencies that we can experience as a result of not getting in it. And it's so easy for our kids to be deficient, sometimes because they're not getting the form that they can use and absorb, which means that even though you may be giving them food or you're feeding them, they're not getting the absorption of what they need in that food. Minerals regulate body's processes and give structure to things in the body. So, it doesn't produce any calories, so you don't have to worry about that, and it cannot be destroyed by heat. Major types of minerals include calcium, phosphorus, magnesium, electrolytes, which include potassium, sodium, and chloride. And then they also include your trace minerals, which is chromium, copper, fluoride, iodine, iron, manganese, selenium, and zinc. So calcium helps to build the bone, they helps with muscle contraction, they're important for the heart function, nerve function, blood clots, common effect. And it has a common effect, it's usually given at night. Carbonate is usually better than the citrates, and for kids you need a significant amount. So for a number, I put a little bit more in here for calcium because a number of our kids are on the gluten-free, casein-free diet, and so may not be drinking milk, but you need to crucial that you get in calcium because that's so important for these all different functions that I talked about. So oftentimes people will be going to getting products, and they think about from that perspective, you need to make sure that you're getting the elemental calcium that will be helpful to absorb. Phosphorus generates energy and regulates energy metabolism. It's important for bones and the teeth. Also part of the DNA and RNA for cell growth and repair. And almost all foods and protein-rich foods. So protein-rich foods has a number of, it covers a lot of the minerals and also the vitamins. Magnesium, so important. This is one I mentioned that earlier, magnesium and B6. So there's some key minerals and vitamins that are very important in our realm of the kids on autism spectrum. I have magnesium at home, give it in an oral form. We also use it in, baths and, the Epsom salt bath because it helps with so many things and is very crucial for cells and in the nerves. And we know that autism spectrum disorders along the lines of a neurological dysfunctionality. So this magnesium has a very important role in helping to regulate that. It's important for the component of the bones, and the source of it includes legumes, nuts, and whole grains. Like I said, because a number of our kids or individuals that are self-restricted in diet, you have to now have a way of supplementing it. Electrolytes include your chloride, which produces fluid balance and digestion of food and transmit nerve impulses. Potassium maintains blood pressure and nerve impulses and muscle contraction. And then sodium produces fluid balance. It relaxes the muscle and transmits nerve impulses, and it regulates blood pressure. Sources include of electrolyte include sodium, chloride, and then fruits, veggies, beans, fish, nuts, and chicken. Part of iron is also important. There's controversies about how much iron, and making sure there's not an overload of it. And that's a key point, but it's also important that iron there's not a deficiency in that because it's part of the hemoglobin, which carries oxygen and which gives us energy. And it's also important for brain development and healthy immune system. So sources include your animal and plants versions. It's usually better absorbed from the heme versus the non-heme. Heme is animal-based sources. And so if you consume it with vitamin C, if you take the plant version, then you probably need vitamin C along with it to help the absorption of the iron. Fortified cereals and beans and eggs, etc., will give you iron. Let's talk about antioxidants. Antioxidants are crucial. They slow and prevent damage to the body cells and improve immune function and lower risk for infection. So in this, once again, COVID climate, taking in your antioxidant is important. So your carotenoids, which include beta carotene, vitamin C and E, are all good sources of antioxidants, and they're found in colorful veggies and vegetables and grains. And then let's go into phytonutrients. These are plant-based. They basically act like a spark to spark the body processes to fight and reduce risk for certain diseases. May be found in fruits and veggies and includes, we mentioned the carotenoids already, lutein, lycopene, and flavonols, prebiotics, probiotics, and soybeans. These are all tools that are plant-based that helps to kind of activate the process of body fighting against certain diseases. The other functional foods that I talk about, these are foods that provide benefit beyond basic nutrition. And we talked about the phytonutrients before. Prebiotics, probiotics, very important. Your fatty fish, omega-3s, soy proteins, your oats, and your flax seeds. These are all functional foods that have huge benefit in terms of helping the body system process the way it should. And will impress upon us the importance of reading food labels. So when you read food labels, some will list A, C, calcium, and iron. Pay attention to how much of it is in there really, because oftentimes it's really not adequate, or even the description of it. And then others may list potassium, folate, and riboflavin, which we talked about earlier. So I wanted to kind of dive in here a little bit and talk about the value of our immune system and supporting it right now. So signs of immunodeficiency would be frequent illnesses. So if you have a child that gets a cold a lot, eczema, these are all signs that they have low glutathione level. The glutathione is very important in helping the body to detoxify. And it's also a super, super duper detoxifier is the best way to describe it. And it's important because that's the end target of methylation process. We talked about methylation, meaning that your body converts a particular vitamin into a form that it can use. So it's almost like that conversion process, and the enzymes what we'll use to convert to the form the body uses is not functioning the way it should. So then this way you have a problem, and usually if there's a problem with this methylation process, it will affect your immune system and it will cause the individual to be immunodeficient. So what are some of the ways to supplement it? We talked about the vitamins, A, C, E. Zinc is very helpful. Selenium, coenzyme Q10, garlic, cranberry extract, olive leaf. These are all factors that can help with the immune function. So if people are wondering which vitamins and minerals they need in this COVID climate, this is the stuff that they want to focus on. We talked about sleep being an issue earlier. So our clients have trouble falling asleep, night awakening. These are all because there may be low hormones, serotonin and melatonin issues that are going on there. So some of the strategies for that is to use magnesium sulfate. You can use the Epsom salt bath and soak about 3 times a week. Sometimes you can use magnesium cream if you take it in. I didn't get into these other tablets, but I had this slide deck and I thought it would be helpful to kind of talk about it, but this is like an advanced level. I'm talking about your vitamins and minerals. So GABA and taurine, and these are all amino acids that are also helpful in helping sleep. Melatonin, some of us are actually getting to the 2 milligram, 3 milligram, after 5 milligram to help with the children sleeping at night. Definitely eliminating caffeine and reducing sugar intake and all those things are very helpful. I talked about the detox pathway a little bit. It's just basically a process to help the body function properly. And they're important in removing toxins out of the system. And your most super detoxifier, which is your potent antioxidant glutathione, is usually created from the methylated vitamins and minerals. And so the body cannot function the way it should when there's low glutathione levels. So we need to make sure our vitamins and minerals are on board because you need it to not act this thing. So what helps is that we talked a little bit about the vitamin B12 earlier, but we use a methylated form, folic acid, vitamin B6, multivitamins and minerals. And I mentioned particular products here, which you can get. And I'll mention some of the companies you can get it from at the end, the big companies anyway. Sulfation is a process in which it's a part of detoxification, and it maintains the lining of the gut and then the hormone production. So usually low levels are seen in individuals with autism, and this is because of due to absorption and poor cycling of sulfate by the kidneys. And so we know that some of the things that can help is magnesium sulfate, which is in Epsom salt. Essential fatty acids, very crucial in helping to boost the immune system. And so omega-3s truly one of the areas that we need to make sure we have enough of. And omega-3 is available as a DHA or EPA in cod liver. But remember, cod liver oil also has good vitamin D and A. So, you know, essential fatty acids that really, it's been shown to help with language and learning and skills and things like that. So I'm a big fan of the Nordic Naturals for their product because they, you know, less likely to have mercury in it. I'm a big juicer. I believe in it. It helped my son Nicholas quite a bit, you know, because and so now, so this will be in the beginning when we first started this autism journey, we were on so many vitamins and mineral supplementations. Over time, he has his gut healed. His gut healed because the inflammation went down. And how do you know it's healed? Is because then he was able to tolerate food that he was eating. You know, you don't see the food in the stool anymore. The stool was normal. You know, so we now got to a place where we were juicing vegetables, cabbage, spinach, carrots, broccoli, and those things. And those things have helped him tremendously. And so we're recommended because if you do that, that will help to get the absorption of the food if they can't eat it. And then we talked about other things that can help improve the stomach function, because the goal is not to be on a lot of heavy duty vitamins and minerals. I'm not a big proponent of exogenous, well, we use the word exogenous, external, versus getting it in foods. Food when it's organic, food when it's natural, food that's not converted, less amount of GMOs and things like that helps. That's really the ultimate. But if you can, then you have to get it from outside source. So probiotics is definitely one of the things that you need to really maintain a good stomach function. And a good stomach function means that when you take in vitamins and mineral, which are typical, they're not the part that is like the end product, you still can absorb it. Because so the goal is make sure that our gut is functioning, make sure that the detoxification pathway, the methylation pathway, all those pathways are functioning the way they should. So we want that. So we definitely want that gut wall to be, you know, in a function that is tight and it's not leaky and it's not going to get rid of all the vitamins before it's even had a chance to be digested. So we want probiotics, which helps with that. So antioxidants, I talked a little bit about that. Give lots of it: vitamin C, cod liver oil, oil of oregano, zinc, oregano, garlic, and glutathione. These are all things that would help. And I'm coming to the end by just showing you again our roadmap from Kirkman's. And here they kind of give you, if you have poor nutritional function or nutritional profile, what should you be taking? Vitamins B6 and magnesium, right? Omega oil product and cod liver oil. If you have heavy toxic metals, you want selenium and zinc and vitamin C, because those things can help with the detoxification pathway. If your immune system is dysfunctional, you need immune supporters: zinc, vitamin C, vitamin E, coenzyme Q10, glutathione. Those are the things that you need. You know, you have sleep issues, you definitely want to make sure that you're getting your melatonin and GABA and taurine and magnesium. Talked about that earlier. So if you have digestive issues, you know, you need your probiotics, you need digestive enzymes. I didn't get into that too much because that's a whole different conversation, and the types. And this is just a general overview, because if I went into this, you need a whole seminar. Many of us have gone through programs that have taught us a lot. But I think for the average person, the basics is really where to start. It's like, okay, why do I need these vitamins and minerals in the first place? Well, you need it because the body system needs to function. And what happens when I don't get enough of it? When you don't get enough of it, or the individual doesn't get enough of it, they end up with all these issues that we talked about earlier. And then when they have these issues, then they don't function the way they should. And they're not, no amount of speech therapy, OT, and the whole 9 yards will work fully to the way it should when the body system is not functioning that the way it is. So that is the reason why we need to pay attention to the minerals and the vitamins the individual is getting in. And I know it's getting harder. Like, you know, for us, even right now, my son Nick is a little bit more resistant to taking some of these things. So we're having to now make sure his food is rich, so that, you know, he can get it in and absorb it that way. And so far, so good. So keep vitamins and supplements that you need. I think that if you can keep it simplified, the better. I mean, otherwise you'll be, I've seen families who have spent lots of money on so many different nutrients and vitamins, and you can go broke just doing that. And the last thing you want to do is go broke so that you can't even take care of your family. People are filing for bankruptcy after spending lots of money on things that, can help, but it's not necessarily means that it's for them. Magnesium, very important, helps with sleep. That's one. So I have some crucial vitamins that I have right now on hand, and these are the ones that I use on hand right now. Magnesium, because it helps. It helps us also with seizures, by the way. Omega oils and 6 to help with inflammation, because that's the base of all the problem. Probiotics, it helps restore gut function. Once again, you're dealing with the issues at hand. Melatonin to help with sleep, and then of course your antioxidants, which you talked about earlier, and then you have your vitamin B. If you have to now pick your vitamin Bs, make sure you have a 6 and you have a 12 and you have folic acid, or folinic acid rather. Folinic acid is the methylated form of your folic acid. So that's the end product. And if the child cannot absorb folic acid, then you need to go down to folinic acid. That's the part that they need. And then you might have to do the methylated form of vitamin B12, methylated form of the B6. So the goal is that the gut is working so that we don't have to buy these end products. One will argue that we'll buy the end product anyway, but if cost is an issue, then that's something to think about. Where do I get these supplements? If online, you can go to Emerson Ecologics, you can go to Kirkman Labs, Claire Labs, Whole Foods, Trader Joe's. I know a number of people who have, companies that sell it, among our groups. Like I said, reach out and we can connect you. But for the sake of this talk, I just want to make it broad. So anywhere it's understood. And a lot of times to these brands, the companies that are making these brands, Emerson Ecologics, carries a number of these brands, but you can go directly to the source. So, so when you're buying these vitamins, what do you need to think about? Always look at how much is the elemental content. So whenever you look at a product, they're gonna have the active ingredient and then the salts in it. So the salt means that it can say, so for example, you can say magnesium sulfate. Magnesium is the main crux of the mineral in there. But you got to look at how much of it is the elemental, how much is the actual active ingredient, or you can say calcium carbonate. Calcium carbonate can say 500 milligrams, but or you can say 1200 milligrams rather. 1200 milligrams, say calcium carbonate, 1200 milligrams, but the amount of actual calcium in it is going to be less. So the actual calcium is really what you're looking at, is the elemental calcium. So anytime you're looking up any of the product, always look at how much is my elemental content. That's what you want, is the active ingredient. The rest of it is really the salt form. That's how it's designed or packaged. And so if you get a product, I use the calcium as an example, calcium carbonate versus calcium citrate. So you look at it, one of them, it may have the same total milligrams at the end of it, but when you look at the elemental, one has more than the other. So those are some of the things to look out for when you're now going and buying your vitamins and minerals. I also want to make sure that I list some of these companies because I want to make sure that you're getting products that are, reputable, products that that the companies can get themselves in trouble if they don't do the right thing. So I like broad and I know now these days you can order a lot of these things on Amazon anyway, but just make sure that if you're getting from a company, the product is, it's from a reputable source that you can really trust and count on. So those are some of the elements of that. I'm going to pause here, stop here, and if people have any questions. Jenny, I don't know if you have the questionnaire for people at the end. Yeah, so let me pause share for a minute. Stop share. Yeah, so I will, I noticed we had limited number of people join us today. I thought they wanted to hear about vitamins and minerals. And it's usually the same people that always ask. All right, any questions to me for those of you who are on, or, I know 2 of you are on here that are seasoned you have a lot of experience with minerals and vitamins. Anything you want to add to the conversation? Crystal, Mylene?
I'm sorry, I know I came in a little bit late. I know you were talking about absorption.
Uh-huh.
There are certain things that you should do to help absorption, or it depends on what you're trying to use?
It depends on what you're trying to use. Because if it depends on the product. It actually does. Because that's the whole goal of looking at which mineral you're talking about and then determining where, so I use iron, for example, that iron is better absorbed in the presence of an acidic environment. So acidic environment could be created from like vitamin C. So that will help with absorption, right? So certain nutrients and minerals are absorbed in different, and then also absorbed in different parts of the GI tract. So you can enhance the absorption based on what particular item you are. Some things can be better absorbed with food, some things are better not, and so that's the whole concept of look at what the particular product is, and then they take the determination from there. Okay. Any other question?
So I wanted to know, when it comes to the mineral content, let's say you have magnesium malate, magnesium citrate, oxide, sulfate, and all that stuff. You said that you want to look at how much the actual magnesium that they're getting and not really the salt, because it has to be stable, so it has to have that salt. So is there like a place that I can look where I can see from all the minerals? Like, how do I find out how much elemental I'm getting?
Great question. I want to share a screen with you. I had hoped to put it in a PowerPoint, but I didn't have time today, so I didn't get to it. Let me share this with you, and I can send this to everybody. You see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay. So so this one is minerals. It's a whole chart. This is from FDA. And if you look at the end here, it tells you the daily value of what you should be getting. So biotin, it says 3,000 microgram, FOLIC 400, NIACIN 20, the PANTOTHENIC, I got it now, 10 milligrams, RIBOFLAVIN 1.7, thiamine 1.5, vitamin A 5,000 units, daily value, can you imagine? B6 should be 2 milligrams, B12 6 microgram, and so remember, this is on the basic elemental, but then if you're dealing with an individual that has methylation issue, then you definitely want to make sure you're given the methylated form. So that's going to be important. Vitamin C, 60 milligrams, vitamin D, 400 units, vitamin E, 30 units, vitamin K, 80 micrograms, calcium, 1,000 milligrams. So this is also referring to elemental, okay? The calcium, the chloride, 3,400 milligrams, chromium, 120, copper is 2, iodine is 150, iron is 18, magnesium is 400. And so sometimes some of the products you're looking at, it says it will say 20. So that means you got a lot to go. So you might need to look at which form you're getting in. So manganese is 2, molybdenum, I didn't talk about that, but that's 75, phosphorus 1,000, potassium is, and then let's go to molybdenum. What it does is it produces enzyme, it's an enzyme production, or helps to produce enzymes in the body, which is important for the whole methylation, those type of processes I was talking about. Phosphorus, here you have 1,000. Potassium is 3,500. Selenium is 70 microgram. Sodium 2,400, and zinc is 15. And Zinc helps with the growth and development of the immune function, nervous system. So it helps us taste and smell. So if you have a child that has pica, one of the things, pica is when they start eating objects that are not supposed to be eating. And that's because they have that dysfunctionality. That zinc is a very useful tool there. It helps with pica. And so usually 15 milligrams is what you want. And this daily values are recommended for individuals 4 years and older. So if you guys find this useful, I can send it to you. So that's part of that. I hope that answered your question, Marlene. You said I should send it. So I should send the chart, huh? You said it helped or no?
What I was thinking more is that because when the salt part is with the elemental, I'm always thinking about magnesium because it's so important for a kid. So let's say the malate versus the citrate, and how does that salt content affect the amount of actual magnesium that you're getting?
So you still have to go back to the elemental form. Because if you have, and they will tell you that, how much elemental is in there.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. Got it.
Right. So if you look at, I'll use iron for example. So you have ferrous sulfate and ferrous gluconate, which is iron, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at the elemental, the ferrous gluconate milligram, when you buy it, is usually will say something like 300 milligrams. But then if you look closer at the elemental iron in it will say something like 35 or 65 milligrams.
Yeah.
So even though it says 300 milligrams, it's 65. The content, the amount in it is not as high as, say, your sulfate.
Yeah.
So you have to take more pills to get to the same amount.
I know.
So usually that's the difference between like your malate when you're talking about your magnesium, for example. So you definitely want the salt form that gives you the most amount of the elemental component to get to the daily value.
Yeah, of course.
But then sometimes, this is where some of to Chris's question earlier, sometimes one is better absorbed than the other from a standpoint of tolerability. And because it's the salt form of it, when it gets into the body, it gets absorbed. One could be more irritating than the other. We didn't get into that. You can kind of drill down into the different salt forms. So if you, for example, Marlene, who counsels parents about these supplements, you might want to drill down on the differences between the salt versions when you're talking to them.
Yeah, that much I understand the difference between them. I just wanted to know like how much elemental, if when you look at the label,
Yeah.
let's say magnesium says 150 milligrams of magnesium, let's say citrate, are they really getting the 150 milligrams of magnesium citrate, or 150 is actually magnesium plus whatever salt?
So legally they're supposed to report elemental.
Mm-hmm.
That's how labels go. They're supposed to report elemental.
Oh, okay. Got it. Okay. That's what I thought, but then when you talked about it, I'm like, okay. Am I sure, that I understand correctly? So that explains it thoroughly. Thanks.
No. So they're always supposed to report elemental. That's why I was saying that if you have a good reputable source, that's what they're supposed to reflect. So and Chris, we'll get you offline on the probiotics and vitamins that you may be looking at, just so that, like I said, I don't these days, even when you put things on social media, then you get yourself in trouble in promotions, and so I don't want to be promoting. I have to make those disclaimers. Even though I'm doing stuff with MyGOAL, when I have to do stuff for work, I have to say, okay, I do not make money off of any particular product, and I have no business in anything. I have to do so many disclaimers on other things everywhere else, even though I'm not promoting and I'm not getting any money for it. Otherwise, I have to disclose every single affiliation I have with everybody for work. Can you imagine? Because they want to make sure that you're not getting kickbacks anywhere. That's why. So I will offline share with you what we're doing with Nick and some of the companies. All right. Thank you, ladies, for joining. I hope this has been informative for you, or that, like I said, you guys are the pros and you're the ones here. The ones that are like, I don't know, minerals, vitamins, that's boring. I want to talk about back to school stuff, right? That's more interesting.
There's so many vitamins and minerals. I'm still learning, so it's fine.
Okay. Good. I'm glad to hear that. So, Jenny, if you can share that with them, you can email it. It's in the folder, so we can send it to them.
No problem.
All right. Well, thank you guys for joining. It was great seeing all of you, and we hope you guys can join us on Thursday for Ask the Expert series, where we continue our conversation about the obstacles that we're